Okay, great. So, morning everyone, and welcome to O Books Presents. I'm Ben Grabe, and here at O Books we publish lots of different books for spiritual living from across the whole body, mind and spirit world. Please subscribe to our channel now if you want to know more. Today we've got one of our authors who's published loads of books with us, Maggy Whitehouse, and I don't know how to introduce Maggy because she's brilliant at lots of different things. She's ordained as a priest. She's a comedian, a stand-up comedian. She's an expert on various types of spiritual knowledge, including the Kabbalah and law of attraction. The books she's published with us, from Credit Crunch to Pure Prosperity, Kabbalah Made Easy, Marriage of Jesus, The Miracle Man, Prosperity Teachings of the Bible Made Easy, A Woman's Worth, The Divine Feminine in the Hebrew Bible. That gives you a bit of a snapshot of all her knowledge. And but today we're going to focus on a really best-selling books with us called Kabbalah Made Easy, and we're going to talk about the Kabbalah. Morning, Maggy.
Morning.
Was that right? Was that a fair bio?
I think so.
Great, thank you. Well, I think that we're going to keep focused on Kabbalah this morning, and loads of people have heard of it. Probably less people have as kind of grounded and clear understanding as you. So I just wanted to ask you, how did you discover it, and a little bit about how it's helped you? And
Sure. Oops, she should just drop something off the desk immediately. Mercury is retrograde. Yes, Kabbalah includes astrology. The first thing I think to say is I'm not associated with the Kabbalah Centre. There's a place called the Kabbalah Centre, which is sort of very rock-friendly. Madonna's part of it, and people like Demi Moore and all that, and I'm not. I don't know if there's anything wrong with it or right with it. I'm just not part of that. I'm part of a tradition that's actually an awful lot older, which is how you interpret Kabbalah from the Bible for the modern day, and that's what I love. The reason I got into it was, well, I was what I'd call an armchair Christian, which meant I sort of turned up at church at Christmas and thought I'd put C of E on any form I had to fill in. And I think you could sum me up best by St. Augustine's phrase, which is, God grant me chastity, constancy and patience, but not yet. So I was just pottering on with my life. I was a journalist, a TV presenter, and I met a guy when I was filming in China, and we fell in love and we got married a couple of months later. I had this wonderful burgeoning career about being a travel presenter on TV about China and the Far East. So Henry and I got married, and within a 6-month period, Tiananmen Square happened. So no more China, Korea, and Henry died. He died 1 year and 16 days after our wedding, and he was an atheist, which didn't bother me at the time. But as his deathbed, the hospital chaplain said, "I'm sorry, my dear, but he can't go to heaven if he doesn't believe in our Lord Jesus Christ," which nowadays people just go, but this was nearly 30 years ago, and things have changed so much. And back then, that was like somebody sticking a knife in my stomach. It really was. And it just made me think. It woke me up. So in a way, that guy was an angel in disguise, though I wasn't entirely impressed at the time. And at Henry's funeral, I asked the vicar if he would not say those words, "I'm the resurrection and the life." But he said, "That's the way the funeral service is, dear." And that's basically what happened. So I walked up the aisle in the church, hearing my husband, who was actually a nicer man than I was at the time, damned to hell because he hadn't signed on the dotted line of the right religion. And I just threw Jesus out of the window at that point. I tried to throw God out of the window, but he wouldn't go. And didn't know what to do with myself, because there was this sort of small but significant hole in my psyche. So I dove into the New Age. I studied healing, which was the one thing that helped Henry while he was sick. And I got involved in all sorts of things, learned about the chakras, learned about life, the universe and everything, and Buddhism, and was very happy. I even co-founded a holistic magazine in the Midlands called Tree of Life. And that was great because it gave me a whole new way of living. However, a couple of years down the line, I realized that, well, my prosperity wasn't good. And I was studying prosperity consciousness, and I realized that money being a neutral energy is going to reflect whatever's going on in your life. And I found out more and more people in the New Age had huge financial issues, and I was getting huge financial issues. And I thought, okay, I'm missing a trick here. What's going on? And in counseling, meditation, working it all out, I realized what I had done is I'd stuck Christianity in the corner of my room, covered it in a nice pink throw with some tea lights on top and some very pretty crystals, but underneath it was a seething heap of fury. And if I didn't get down and dirty into that and work out what my real problem was and how much anger I had and how much grief and despair and actual hatred of the religion, then I wasn't going to heal. So I knew I had to sort that out, and I asked for help. And the next thing I knew, I'd fallen in love with a Jewish guy. And that was kind of helpful because that had the God thing in it, but none of that nasty Christianity. And my husband and I were both a bit, so we were at the end of our tether. He was at the end of his tether from Judaism. I was at the end of my tether from Christianity. And together we discovered Jewish mysticism, or Kabbalah, through a teacher of healing that I had. And we went and started studying that. And to tell you how important it came to us, the class that we went to was in London. We were living in Birmingham at the time. It was at 8 o'clock every Thursday night, 3 times a year. And we had to drive from Birmingham to get to it. And if you were 1 minute late for that class, the door was shut and you didn't get in. And that meant we had to address the rush hour from Birmingham to London at 5:30 every Thursday night and drive down to London to go to this 1 hour class and then drive back. So that was how committed we were to it. We really, really, really wanted this teaching. And sometimes people say, as a teacher, I'm a bit scary. I don't want to be scary. But when you have made that commitment yourself, you can sometimes go a bit, okay, when people won't travel 5 miles to come to your class. However, if they don't have the commitment for the class, they don't want the teaching from you, and that's ultimately okay. And you do learn who really has got the commitment to it. I'm sounding really scary now because I don't really mind if you aren't that committed. It's Nick Williams, who's a teacher in London, a lovely guy. He says basically there are 3 sorts of people who are studying this: paddlers, waders and swimmers. The paddlers want to stick their toe in, and that's great. They're the ones who'll do the online courses or something. The waders may actually show up, and the swimmers are the ones who want to change their life with the work.
Yeah. So obviously, out of the whole New Age kind of world, is what you're saying is this was kind of a particular form of knowledge that really resonated and inspired that swimming or that depth of commitment from you.
It really did, because Kabbalah isn't a religion. People will probably try and tell you that anything in spirituality, it can get tied up in its form rather than being the open access. I mean, when I studied Reiki for example, that's what I started off with, which everybody did 30 years ago. And now you're nobody if you're not a Reiki master now, but it was really quite special. And I think what I needed was structure. There was so much flow out there, and the Reiki, I changed traditions of Reiki halfway through, and the first tradition of Reiki immediately ostracized me because I'd become a traitor. I'd become the kind of person who was going off with somebody else, whereas I was trying to follow my heart. And that I have a phrase which you may want to edit out, in which case you want to go beep, 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 which is fine, which was taught to me by a friend of mine called Alison Smith. It's not original to me, and it's wanky bollocks. And there's an awful lot of wanky bollocks in the New Age and in spirituality. And the wanky bollocks comes when you've just basically changed tribe, and you use all this New Age beautiful, loving, I'm sending you love stuff to mask your aggression or to mask your pain. I see an awful lot of that, and in fact on the comedy circuit I do extract the Michael out of it a little bit, and of Orthodox religion too. When you're going around telling everybody about your food intolerances and you're a size 22 and always wearing the floaty dresses, and sometimes some part of me, I'm afraid I'm a Korean, sort of goes, it's not quite working out, is it? In the end, it's got to be what works. For me, this system works. That doesn't mean I have to impose it on anybody else. But if anything that I'm doing or living or teaching is helpful, I'm going to have to bring it in because it's my truth.
Yeah.
But it's only my truth. And the great thing about it is this pile of scaffolding, you can hang a book on it, you can plan your life on it, you can worship via it, not to it, but via it. You can structure Buddhism on it, you can structure Christianity on it. Once you understand it, it's a language, it's like astrology, and it really opens up these orthodox religions, which have become great control festivals, if you like, and have become are so tribal. And it opens it up, it makes it non-dual, so you can just go yes and I can talk to Sufis and Buddhists and Christians and Jews and atheists and agnostics, and we can find a common ground, and that to me is so valuable.
Yeah. Okay, lovely. So what in relation to what you just said, what I like about your writing is that you're not the wanky bollocks or spiritual bypassing kind of stuff that goes on. Like, you talk about different types of Kabbalah and different movements, but you avoid all the stuff like my way is the best way, my tribe is the best tribe, my special take on it, which is going to unlock everything for you, only I'm the one with the knowledge from God. All that stuff which you see all the time. It's what I felt from your writing is very down to earth. You've got a very grounded take on it. And what you were saying about being committed, I mean, I'd want that in a teacher, really, because I wouldn't want a teacher who wasn't serious about it, really, which is
serious but not heavy-hearted about it. Yes. Yeah. If I may just go off on a tangent, you'll notice I'm wearing a dog collar. That's because I am ordained. This is my rainbow clerical shirt, which I love. Went in with it to the Edinburgh Fringe this year, and I just got stopped in the streets by so many gay and trans people going, "Are you actually a vicar?"
Yeah.
But doesn't religion say? And it was just so lovely to say in about 2 sentences, there is a social law from the Hebrew Testament about this. And St. Paul was working with a community that used male rape as a form of power. Yeah. There's nothing in the Bible that says 2 people of the same gender may not love each other. And they were just going, and taking selfies with me just because I'd bothered to wear the rainbow shirt. And the reason I am very happy to wear the dog collar, though it's a difficult thing to wear nowadays, because most people look at you and think you're just some deluded twat.
Yeah.
Who doesn't know that the world is big and round and the universe is vast. But when my bishop persuaded me to train, to join the seminary and train, he told me something that was really important. There's no proof for this. None. You won't find it anywhere in a book or on the internet. It's part of the oral tradition. And the important thing about Kabbalah is to understand it's an oral tradition. It updates for every generation. The scaffolding is sound, like the 10 Commandments. The 10 Commandments are sound. But everything else, like the other 603 commandments from the Hebrew Testament, are social laws for the time. The Kabbalah will teach you what laws are universal, what are not. Excuse me, I have to cough. And my bishop taught me that the dog collar was originally the collar of Anubis, which takes us straight back to the Egyptian teachings. And Anubis, of course, was the god, the jackal-headed god, who weighed the hearts of the dead on a scale against a feather. And if your heart was as light as a feather, you went to the right part of the underworld. And if your heart was heavy, you hadn't got the vibration that would take you to the right level of the underworld, so you just couldn't go there. It wasn't about bad karma. It was literally about what was your vibration about. So Bishop David said to me, the job of the priest is to lift hearts. Your job is to help people have a heart as light as that feather, and that is the whole of the ministry. And I choked up at that, and I still choke up at it, because I sort of think, wow, what a difference. It's not about laying down the law, follow this law, and you'll get to heaven. It's actually about heaven. The kingdom of heaven is within you. It's the solar plexus chakra if you transpose the traditions. So if you are not happy now, you can't get to heaven, because the road to joy is the road itself. You can't get to the destination on a road full of misery. And that's the big block that nearly every religion has thrown at itself, is it says you've got to be miserable to get to joy. It doesn't work. It's an unsustainable teaching. It just is.
Yeah, brilliant. And I think it's wonderful that you're there in your rainbow shirt and, talking to people like that. And also, despite all the difficult stuff about the New Age world and et cetera, like, there's lots of good stuff as well around, and it's, I think it's really important that
in the end, is it working?
Yeah.
In the end, does it work? I mean, Dr. Phil in America has got this phrase that says, "And how's that working for you?" Yeah. When people tell him how they're living their life, and they'll tell the story, and he'll go, "How's that working for you?" And it's a bit like Byron Katie. It's the same thing. Just flip it.
Yeah.
Are you happy in this? And whenever somebody will come for a session or any kind of thing, in the end, you have to keep going. But are you happy? But are you happy? Why do you come for the session? Are you happy? And in the end, they'll go, no. And we say, then we have to find what isn't working and flip it.
Lovely. Is it working? That's good. You're navigating the Mind, Body, Spirit bookshelf and all that. It's good. Little mantra. So to bring it back, Kabbalah, one of the things you said before about studying this opens up the Bible for you, and I wonder if you could say a little bit about its relationship to the Bible stories, and maybe a little bit about the history of the different forms, and then maybe we could talk quickly about the
I love doing this. Yeah. It's just completely my passion. Yes, what is taught by the ancient mystics is that you have to read the Bible on 4 levels. Literal, did it happen or did it not happen? And is it a history story? Allegorical, what's this story mean? What's it actually about? And then metaphysical, which is, how does this relate to me? Which bits of the Bible really hack me off? What is this bringing up in me? What am I projecting onto it? Which stories do I love? Which stories do I hate? And why? Once you get into that, so many people have got problems with the Bible, and we have to look at, what's the problem? This is an allegory. What is the problem? And then the final one is the mystical, which is, what is this telling us about the state of humanity, the growth of humanity, the soul of humanity? And once you start doing that and you start applying the mathematical principles of the tree of life, I'm not a person for Bible codes or anything like that, but there are certain patterns. There's this pattern of 4, physical, psychological, spiritual, divine. And you'll notice immediately there's 4 gospels. That is not a coincidence. There's a gospel for the physical world, for the psychological world, for the spiritual world, for the divine world. And if you don't know how to read them that way, you won't get them. It won't make sense to you why the stories are repeated, but ever so slightly differently. And then you suddenly go, oh, I meant to read them differently. I meant to read them from different parts of my psyche. Oh, good grief. And then you start realizing that in the Gospel of Matthew, there are 10 miracles. They climb the Sephirot, the circles of the tree of life, the different aspects of our psyche, and each one of them tells you how to deal with that block in your own psyche. And what I just love about it is that it's all in certain patterns, and once you know the pattern, you can just go, oh, that's about that then. Oh, that's about that then. That's relevant. That's here for me. And I specifically love the stories of the women in the Hebrew Testament because they chronologically tell the story of the human soul, how we develop from sheer survival through the ego and the working with the tribe, through the leaving the tribe, the story of the Exodus, going out of Egypt where everything is horrible, but we know it and it's comfortable. We leave it, we go out into the desert, and we have to go away from everything we've believed and throw out our religion and throw out our possessions. Jesus just mirrors that with the idea if you throw away the old possessions, you're going to be able to manifest what you want, just falling from heaven. And once you've got to the promised land, then you've got a whole new series of things to learn, because once you're willing to learn from the level of the soul, you've basically said, God, clear me out. Clear out all this stuff, and then the next load of SH1 comes up because you've committed to it, and the next load of rubbish comes out. And it isn't an easy road. It's a glorious road, but it's not an easy road. But I can go back to the Bible and I can go, where am I? Which woman in the Bible is telling my story now? Am I Ruth? Am I Jezebel? Am I Esther? Am I Deborah? Am I Hannah? Am I Rachel? Am I in whining self-pity? Am I actually out there in the desert? Am I really giving my life to God? Am I trusting? And I can go back to that story and go, okay, that's where I lost the plot. So for me, this is just so, I hate that word, empowering, but it is. You know? So you can tell by the way I'm going, oh God, this is so exciting. How well it works for me. Yeah. And sometimes I can teach that on for other people, especially those who've got real big problems with Christianity like I had, and help them to see that Jesus, the surname of Jesus is not Mr. Christ, which most people think. They think his name is Jesus Christ. No, he's a guy called Jesus who's showing us how we access the Christ consciousness in us. And the Gospel of John is a mystical meditation which we're meant to read in the place of Jesus. So all those great I am sayings, he actually says I am. That's the sound of a beagle flapping, by the way. It's not some mystical thing. It's a beagle that's come in and said, come on, Mum, give me my walk. So Jesus is there as the way shower. And the biggest mistake, what we do is, what human beings are naturally along the lines of going, what's the easiest route? Excuse me, I'm going to cough again. I don't know if you can edit that out, Ben, but it would be nice if you could. But don't worry if you can't.
No, I won't.
And what generally, let's say the truth is in Jerusalem. Let's say it's in Jerusalem. Let's just say it's in Jerusalem. It's not, but let's say it is. So the answer to the truth is to go to Jerusalem. You find the truth in Jerusalem, but that's an awfully long journey. It's really challenging. So it's much easier to find a person who's been to Jerusalem and sit at their feet. And in the modern world, what we'll do is find somebody who's done a webinar or written a book about Jerusalem, and we'll go and read that. And if we can't actually get to Jerusalem or we can't find the book, we'll find a signpost to Jerusalem and we'll worship the signpost. We'll worship the guru. We'll worship the person who's going, it's that way! Because that's so much easier than tying on our sandals and walking the walk. Yeah.
So it's about doing the work, really.
Always about doing the work. Every minute of the day about doing the work. And the most challenging thing I find, I've got a phone call after this webinar with a lady whose husband died 11 months ago, who's made it wrong. She's made his death wrong. And that just tells me so much about the whole of her thought process is about the pattern of making life wrong and the pattern of making death wrong and not being able to move on. And the difficulty you have when you start working with your soul, and let's face it, I'm still practicing, but it's very important never to drop your vibration to the level of the client. Because the second you've dropped your vibration, you can't help them. You can't be the inspiration to them. You can only comfort them. You can give them some tools, but then they're going to start wanting to come back to you for a little bit of your energy and a little bit of your soul. And they'll feel a bit better after that. But the job is actually to be quite tough with them and say, I'm not dropping my energy to sympathize with you. Because the Greek word empatheia, we tend to think it means, oh, I'm relating to you, I'm there with you. It means that you've actually projected how you would feel in their situation and dropped your energy to identify with them. So you cannot be their inspiration. You can't be the one they actually react against. And in fact, one of the things you've got to do as a teacher is make quite sure that nobody's got you on a pedestal. And you've got to be almost mean and sort of say, I'm not coming down there. If you want to learn something from what I teach, you're going to have to come up to me. Because unless you're willing to drop that anger, or at least park it on one side for a few minutes, we can't move here.
So, no, I mean, we're talking about a kind of higher form of empathy where you're not living it with a person, but you're accepting them as they are, but you're not.
Yeah, no, that's a very good way of putting it. Thank you. In fact, you've helped me put it into better words. You love them and you absolutely are there with their soul, which is the real them. But you're not going to identify with their ego consciousness. So absolutely, you can see where they are. You love them completely, as much as your ego will let you, because your own ego is going to get pushed by other people's issues and things like that. But you had what I'll do if I get pushed is I'll go into the Ho'oponopono chant of "I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you" in my mind, and I'll actually just sit there and look and say the chant, which will pull me back to where their soul is, and if I can help them lift, and I am sounding really wanky bollocks here, I know I am, but what I'll do with the Kabbalah is I will teach them where their ego is, how the ego feels, how the self feels, how the soul feels, and hopefully teach them to reach up for the true self and then reach to the soul. Because as soon as you've got to the soul, then you can be the vessel to receive spirit. And we're allotted spirit constantly. And our souls, when they're not trained by clear thinking, are sort of have permeable skins, and the spirit just sort of goes through it down to the ego level and the subconscious and the unconscious, and spirit ends up feeding the negativity because it's got nowhere else to go. So we literally have to pick it up and direct it to where we want to be.
So this, what we're talking about, being with people in suffering and helping them, is that's relevant for anyone, whether it's your wife or your child or your best mate or something. But I want to ask you, because we started off with the 4 different levels of reading Bible stories, and I wanted to ask you maybe how those 4 levels, and how you, when you're counselling someone or whatever, how that fits in with the diagram behind you, and how you're using the Kabbalah to help people understand where they are and what they're going through.
Quick Kabbalah lesson coming up. Right, 4 worlds. 1 world.
Yeah.
It's white one. And below it, the same shape is a blue and white one.
Yep.
And below that, the same shape is a purple and blue one. And below that, the same shape is a purple and red one.
Yep.
Yes?
Yeah.
Got 4 worlds. Each is one of the elements. The physical world is the one at the bottom. It's the most fragile. You break it, something dies. At the top is divinity. Not actually God. God is beyond existence, pure beingness, but it's the divine world. And all humans are ultimately divine. We come from that world at the top. We are, each of us, one spark in the baby that God is giving birth to. Yeah. So the universe is not complete till every being in it is perfected. That's the job.
Yep.
One thing we've got free will about, we were all perfect, no matter how many lifetimes it takes. The top world is the Gospel of John. The second world down is the Gospel of Luke. That's the world of spirit. First world is pure potential. It's like you have an idea, you have an inspiration, you go, whoa, I'd like to write a book on Kabbalah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whoa! And then quite often that just dies by the wayside. The second world down is actually, how do you structure that? Have you got the, can you actually do it? Have you got the knowledge yet? Have you got the, so the second world actually try and put some bones there. What kind of Kabbalah? Which version are you going to do? What are you going to do? So let's change the analogy. In the top world, God's sort of gone, a horse.
Yeah.
And the second world is going to go, a horse has a mane and a tail. And a horse has 4 legs. And a horse can gallop. Yeah. And a horse eats grass. Yeah. And the horse can be male or female. Yeah. So now you've got your workshop or your book or your horse. You've got the bones of it.
Yeah.
The next world down is the world that we humans mostly live in, which is the forms. What do we put on that horse? Is it going to be a grey horse, a black horse? Is it going to be a Lipizzaner? Is it going to be a stallion? Is it going to be gelded? Is it going to be a mare? Is it a Shetland pony? Where does it live? Who owns it? What nature has this horse got? Is it a nice horse? Does it bite? Is it easy to ride? Does it not want to be ridden? Is it a carriage? Do you see what I mean? And then the world below, the physical world, is the manifestation of that horse. So that's how you do it. We tend to read the Gospels. I'm going on the Gospels because it's this analogy of 4, because otherwise we're going to get a bit complicated. We start reading Matthew, which is the physical world that Jesus came into with genealogy. And it's got all the physical stuff about it. And how you teach people is literally with the story of the crucifixion to start with. In Matthew, physical world, physical disease, physical psyche, what's actually going on. Jesus on the cross goes, my God, why have you forsaken me? Because it hurts. and it's wrong, and it's mean, and it's vile, and it's the fault of the world, and it shouldn't have happened, and it's the Romans, and it's the Jews, and it's the this. So that's where we start off with our problems, in the physical world, in the Gospel of Matthew.
Yeah.
And we're focusing on the pain. Yeah. And the law of attraction will tell us that if you focus on that, you're going to get more of it. So we move up to the Gospel of Mark, which is Jesus starting to develop from human to Messiah, from the human level to the psyche. He's going from the ego to the self. And there's all sorts of stories about love, about compassion, about seeing the better, about responding with love. However, Mark is still a difficult gospel. So this is where we get to the emotional thing of hanging on the cross, because basically somebody's betrayed us. Mark is about the betrayal. And the Christian story is all about the teaching of you are born on this planet, you will be betrayed. That's all there is to it. You'll be betrayed.
Yeah.
If somebody else doesn't betray you, you'll betray yourself. Betrayal is part of the human story. How are you going to deal with it? And Mark teaches us that psychologically, again, we don't deal with it very well. We go, my God, why have you forsaken me? Yeah. This isn't fair. I'm a good person. I did it right. Why have I got no cash? Why have I got cancer? Why this? Why that? So it's telling us that while we're still in the psychological level, we're still not working it. But the clues in the gospel about Jesus expelling demons. In Matthew, he gets rid of physical illnesses. In Mark, he's expelling demons. So the message is the demons of the psyche are the problem here. Am I making sense?
Yeah. Well, what you're saying here is it's reading the Gospels using this kind of metaphysical kind of mythopoetic structure, and it just struck me as you're saying it. It's quite similar to what you went through when you discovered it, and you just went through a big disappointment in your life, hadn't you?
Yeah.
You know, why's my husband died?
Why's my career gone out of the window? Why is everybody now being mean to me? Why does God hate me? Why? Yes, exactly. Yeah. And I was on the cross.
Yeah.
Dolly Parton has a great phrase, which is "Get off the cross. Somebody could use the lumber."
Yeah.
And Deepak Chopra says, "I'm not asking you to give up your pain. I'm asking you to give up your suffering."
Yeah.
Gospel of Matthew is all about the physical pain. Gospel of Mark is about the psychological suffering when we hold on to it. Yeah. Gospel of Luke, the crucifixion is entirely different. In the Gospel of Luke, you've got the 4 levels expressed on this diagram. You've got. If you notice, there's 3 parallel bars here, horizontal bars.
Yeah.
First one, Luke explains it beautifully. It's the cross of the first thief. It's the story of the 2 thieves. They're actually malefactors, but thieves is how it's translated. And the first one says to Jesus, "You're the Messiah, get us off this cross. You can do it." And he's at this level, which the Tree of Life teaches is the liminal line, which is around the ego, the tribal consciousness, where we want to be saved. We're not taking any responsibility for our life. We want to be saved. Get me off this. Yeah. Give me the medicine. I don't want to change my diet. I just want the medicine.
Yeah.
And the second thief, who's at this level, at the level of the soul, where you've actually understood personal responsibility, says, leave him alone. He is innocent. We deserve what we've got. And he said, I'm here because of my own responsibility, because of what I did, and I understand that. And Jesus turns to him and says, today you shall be with me in paradise. Because isn't that so simple when you think about it? At the level of the soul, which is the blue level on the Tree of Life, the soul is fed from that blue level. You are realizing, you're conscious. Yeah. You're saying, no, I'm here because I created this. Yeah. Now, I do want to say here that until you know these things, you're not responsible. If you're living life completely ignorant, you have no idea about your own responsibility, you are not to blame for what happens to you. You're tied up in the karma of your family, your social group, and your country, and you're not responsible. Yeah. But once you know, there's no going back. Yeah. Once you realize that you had, by not choosing, you chose. You're here. So that gospel is basically teaching us that as soon as you say, I'm responsible, you get off the cross.
It's like waking up, isn't it? It's like waking up.
Yeah. And that's resurrection.
Yeah.
Get off the cross.
Yeah.
Don't feed the suffering. And John's gospel is very simple. John's gospel basically reveals that what Jesus was doing all through the crucifixion is reciting one of the Psalms. It's the 18th Psalm, which starts, my God, why have you forsaken me? And goes through, Father, forgive them, they don't know what they're doing, which is also in the Gospel of Luke. And that's the soul entirely. Forgive them, they don't know what they're doing. They don't know. And that's where every Christian in the world who blames goes wrong, because 99% of the world does not know what it's doing.
Yeah. And then
just the best it can with the knowledge it's got.
And everyone who blames, because you just switch on Twitter or whatever, and it's just full of blaming, relentless. I mean, I almost.
That's my parish. My parish is Facebook.
Yeah.
And I actually go round my parish, and when I'm feeling strong enough, and without doing the wanky belt, it's all being patronised, I will always try and say, and what's the solution here?
Yeah.
How do we work to a solution here? How do we work to a solution? What's the solution? Sometimes I get a flea in my ear. Sometimes people go, oh, well, perhaps this. And that's the job, because it lifts them to the solution.
Yeah.
Gospel of John is literally all about, at the end of it, the end of the psalm is, it is finished.
Yeah.
And all Jesus does in the Gospel of John is say, I'm thirsty, and then he says, it's done.
Yeah.
I've done my job. I've come here. I've shown you. One, you will be betrayed. If you don't let go of that betrayal and forgive, you will suffer. The second you say, they may not have known what they were doing, and I'm actually not going to give my life to this grief, you will get off that cross and you will resurrect and your life will turn around. And God, New Age law of attraction in the Bible. It's all the way through.
Yeah.
When Rhonda said it was the secret and it's been kept hidden, it's been kept hidden in plain sight.
Yeah. And this is something we all have to go through, right? No one escapes it. No one escapes.
It's what Richard Rohr calls necessary suffering.
Yeah.
And that's why I am a bit of a snotty cow sometimes. Sometimes if I get something from a 25-year-old life coach saying they're going to transform my life, there's a bit in me goes,
yeah.
Come back when you've been widowed or divorced, lost your job, been bankrupt, had this, and then turned it round. Of course those kind of folk are absolutely ideal for people of their own age, and that's right. But ultimately, you're not going to understand the universe until you have recovered from suffering.
Yeah. My little things, I might have to edit this out, but little top things to be worried about, absolute certainty. I always feel like distrust of a teacher, absolutely 100% solidly certain, sort of black and white. But also that thing, if they look like they've got their shit in order, they're probably standing in it. That thing. Yeah.
That is so funny, because yesterday morning I came to sit down here and do a Skype session with somebody, and the cat had got on my seat and obviously, he shat on my seat basically. And I stood there and looked at it and went, what are you trying to tell me about cleaning up my shit here?
Yeah, right. Exactly. But I think, so what we're saying, I don't know what the right word, because what you're talking about is something, the mytho-poetic kind of symbols.
I love that.
Kind of, they go beyond words, they kind of articulate. And so if you work with someone, would you use the diagram? Would you look at the diagram and talk about their personal journey and see it in terms of the diagram behind you?
Yes. Do you know your astrology, Ben?
I do know my astrology, yeah.
Your sun sign, moon sign, and ascendant.
Well, Western, so I do Eastern.
Yes, of course you do Vedic, don't you? Yes.
So I got Sagittarius Sun, tropical zodiac. So Sagittarius Sun, Taurus Moon, and Libra Ascendant.
Right. So I would say to you, your ascendant is here, your physical presentation in the world, your basic survival instinct. Yeah. So your basic survival instinct is you seek balance.
Yeah.
At all points, that's the basic of it. If it's out of balance, you're incredibly uncomfortable. And the thing about a Libra and ascendant is that if something is horribly out of balance, you'll actually go, no! Libra is always thought of as being very soft and smooth and gentle and loving pastel colours and pretty stuff. But Libra is about balance.
And they can be fanatical as well.
Yeah, and will be fanatical about balance. And Mars in Libra, if something is out of whack, it'll take its sword out and go vomph. Yeah. So that I would say that is your Malkut, that is your physical reality, and that's where you're going to go out of kilter when something frightens you.
Yeah.
So knowing that's going to be really, really useful. And then your ego, which is Yesod, your foundation, is Taurus. Now, that is the vessel that was formed when you were a child. It was a basic Taurian vessel, and it will have been filled by your parents, your peers, your teachers, and things like that. So how you react to everything and how you fit in your tribe or not will be basically Taurian. However, you will be prone to the negativity in Taurian, of Taurus. I'm a Taurus sun, so I know a fair amount of the negativity in Taurus. So you will be prone to being lazy, taking the easiest course. You'll be prone to being greedy. Your passions may get the best of you. But on the other hand, the good side of you is you're steadfast, you're loyal, you're thorough, and you're passionate in the right way as well. You're reliable. You're slow and steady. Yeah. Now, what you have to do in Kabbalah is take all the assets of Taurus and realize that those are the servant of yourself. You must never be a Taurian Ben. You must be a Sagittarius, which is this Sephira here, which is Tiferet, which is the kingdom of heaven, the place of the true self, or the solar plexus chakras. So at all points, you have to pull back to being a Sagittarius, which is philosophical, good-natured, tactless, a traveller, somebody who seeks the truth, who's light-hearted. Think of the centaur, and the difficulty with the image of the Sagittarius is the wounded healer, the Chiron, because that can get you trapped into your wounds. So what I would do then is I would take you into the side triads here, which are the unconscious, and look at your Mars and your Mercury and your Jupiter and your Venus, and I would look with you in there what are likely to be the deep unconscious problems that have been brought up in you, and your astrology would help indicate what they might be, so I could lead you into discovering them, and then we'd find out how much of your spirit those side triads are digesting each day. And then we'd go to all the regular usual tools, which is the best tool for healing that triangle, healing that triad. But always what I would do is come back to seek ye first the kingdom of God, which is again one of these wonderful New Age teachings of Jesus. Because what we do is we start at the bottom with seeing the problem. Let's say the problem is, what's the problem? The problem is Brexit, whether you want Brexit or it's all going horribly wrong, and look at it, the government's all, it's wrong, whatever's happening. Whatever's happening, there's a mess in Brexit. I now have a beagle on my lap, sorry about that. But always talking about Malkut, and a beagle is very Malkut. So it's wrong. So then we find a tribe to discuss how wrong it is with. So we add to how wrong it is. And in your case with Taurian, it would be down-to-earth practical stuff, because you like the fact that I'm down-to-earth and practical because your moon is down-to-earth and practical. It's your foundation. Somebody with a Gemini moon will probably find me annoying. And that's fine, because I can work that out and say, I might not be the teacher for you, because I'm going to be annoying. So and then you're going to go off to Hod, which is ruled by Mercury, which is to find an online forum or a group which agrees with you about the problem, and you just go and talk about it and make it bigger. Then you're going to go across to this side. That's the passive side. That's the active side. You're going to go on a march about Brexit, or you're going to write to your MP and you're going to campaign about it. By the time you've done all that, when you get up to your true self, you cannot find the truth and the beauty in the situation. The true self is about truth and beauty. And once you've gone through all that stuff, you haven't got any truth or beauty. So you move on to the next one, which is judgment. So you're judging everything wrong. By the time you move to the next one, which is mercy, you haven't got any. So what Kabbalah actually teaches is you take the situation, it's a problem. I'm going to take it right up the center column to the top, which is my crown chakra, which is what Jesus called the kingdom of God, which means I'm going to detach. I'm going to do whatever form of meditation works for me. Maybe walking the dog, maybe reading a text, maybe listening to music, maybe contemplation, maybe devotion, maybe meditation. And I am going to commit to 10 minutes to that because I'm going to get to the place where I'm detached from the problem.
Yeah.
Second you do that, you come down from there. First Sephira is inspiration. You're going to get an idea. Then you're going to get understanding about the problem, which is this is the core ego of the humanity coming up with Donald Trump and Brexit, telling us actually how much we hate the other.
Yeah.
How much we project on the other. This is what's going on. So then you move across to here, which is how can we put love in it? Yeah. Do you see how differently it is immediately? How can we give love to this? How can we be... What's the merciful thing to do in this situation? Sometimes a Libra knows the merciful thing to do is say, enough, another referendum.
Yeah.
But you can't do that without going across to judgment, which is what is the correct thing to do here. What is the right thing to do? That is merciful. And these two working together with discernment, judgment and mercy are wonderful together. But you've got to go to mercy first.
Yeah.
Then you make your decision, and then you've got truth and beauty, and from then on, everything else can unfold well.
So it's like you're using the model to help understand it and flip it. So you're working from you're
always
working from
flip
God
it.
rather than
go to the top first, and it's quite simple. It's not easy.
Yeah.
That's the thing about all the spiritual work. It's simple. It's not easy.
Yeah. Simple but not easy.
It takes commitment, and that's difficult. Gevura is the aspect of us which is about discipline, judgment, discernment, strength.
Yeah.
And mine is in Aquarius, which means I'll tend to go this way, that way.
Yeah.
So I have to be very aware of how I make decisions and how they impact on other people. And once I've worked out how my decision-making process works, sometimes I'll actually explain it to people. What I would do if I'm in a counselling session or something, either for me or for the other, I will always say to them, because of the way I'm wired, and this diagram helps me see how I'm wired, you're going to notice that in the middle of an intense discussion, I'm going to change the subject and go off on a tangent. Yeah. I am not doing it to derail you or anything. I'm doing it because the way I'm wired means my psyche gets overloaded and I need to change the subject so I can get a bit of breathing space. So it's a defense mechanism.
Yeah.
And if you explain that to somebody, you have the self-knowledge, then they're not going to think that you're dissing them by a behaviour which is actually for your own strengthening.
And it's much harder to stay in that lower realm of judgment and all that stuff.
Oh, it's easy to stay there. It's just not pleasant.
But I mean, if you understand someone's wiring a bit, then it's a bit harder to. Well, you'd hope.
Well, if you understand somebody's wiring, they're not going to push your buttons.
Yeah.
And if you understand your wiring, you're going to dissolve your buttons. Yeah. You're always going to have a few buttons that other people can push. But once you start working from what's known as Tiferet, the place of truth and beauty, you start learning to detach. You observe yourself. I'm sure when you've been in a difficult situation sometimes, Ben, you've watched yourself during the situation.
Yeah.
You've been very, very present and you've watched it unfold. That's the place called Tiferet, the watcher.
Yeah.
And the more you study Kabbalah, the more you can watch yourself. You still don't manage to stop yourself doing the bad behaviour half the time, but at least you can observe it, and sometimes you can flip while you're doing it. Yeah. It is all about the flip.
Yeah.
That's what Byron Katie teaches, which is flipping it from, they shouldn't have done that to they should have.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's been done. So now how do we move on? How do we get off the cross?
Yeah. Well, this I'm having so much fun talking about this. I just want to ask you, anyone watching is going to have a really clear idea about you, your teaching style, how you do it, and I hope they'll be interested in learning more from you and with you. We've got the book Kabbalah Made Easy, which is like a brilliant introduction, and you talk about the history, you go into detail, what every circle, every part of every stage behind you means, and both diagrams explained in detail, different Kabbalah groups, what they do, the differences between them, all that stuff. How else can people learn with you and study with you, and where can people find you?
Well, you can find me via the website, MaggyWhitehouse.com. You've got to spell Maggy with a Y, Magggy.
Yeah.
That's a long story. However, and I do a lot of online work. I live in Devon. I live in Paradise on Dartmoor. And I do travel to London. I do a lot of work at Atlantis bookshop near the British Museum, where I'll do astrological charts and I do Kabbalah workshops. But I do a lot of stuff online. And you won't find things to download from my website. You have to sort of email me to find out what there is, which I know sounds a little bit silly, but we're using our lack of technological savoir-faire to actually talk with people before we let them purchase a course, an online course. You know what I mean? So we can work out what's going to work for them.
Yeah.
I don't like it when people just come along, buy something on spec, and then come back and say it's the wrong course. I don't like the feeling that it's Turian. I don't like them wasting their money.
Yeah.
And I've got a Cancerian ascendant. I would really like them to have what is going to work for them. Right, I have an online mystery school once a month, which is at 8 o'clock on a Tuesday. That's free, because some of this teaching has to be available always. So that is absolutely free. And if you contact me, I will probably ask you to read Kabbalah Made Easy, so you know the background, and you can join that. Certain standards of behavior are required on that. And it sounds so mean, doesn't it? But it's all about how much do you want this? How much do you want this? Because it's big stuff. So the meeting starts at 8 o'clock on the dot with the grand invocation. If you're not there at 8 o'clock, you don't come in. And that's it. Which is what Warren Kenton used to say to us when we would drive down. A couple of times we drove from Birmingham 2.5 hours, got there 2 minutes past 8, weren't let in. You know, and if you're going to get a Broigus on that, then you're putting your ego before everything else, because if you go in late, you're going to disturb the meeting for the rest, and it might be a meditation. So there's the online mystery school, and I've got several courses online, which the details of them are up on the website, but you have to sort of email me about them. One's called it's all about the cosmic Christ, which is about finding the Christ consciousness in you. And in the new year, I'm doing one on the tree of life and healing for you and healing for everybody else. So the best thing to do is find me on Facebook. I've got a Facebook page, and you might even get to be my friend, you lucky person. Come to my comedy gigs. You'll find details of them on my website. And if you want an online course, ask me about it.
Wonderful. Thank you. Yeah. And, I can recommend what you say about, it's ancient knowledge, but it's meant to be refreshed and applied to every modern age. And I definitely say that's, well, the Maggie can do that, make it understandable, make it clear, make you understand this, thousands of years ago in the other side of the world, but make it, fresh and real for your own life. And,
absolutely. And it heals the wounds in religion, because Kabbalah works with every single faith. And it will just show you one beingness, many tribes.
One beingness, many tribes. Beautiful. Yeah. Brilliant. Thank you so much for coming on, and we'll hope to do it again sometime.
Me too. Thank you so much, Ben. It's great. You've been great. Bye.